If you put up barriers, then its Dread Wash can be blocked.
Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time, we're playing just mages. And hey, at least more than half of the duties were not guild hests. That said though, for duty 1, we're going to placing potted plants as Pictomancer, and the tank knows me. Hello! Unfortunately, at this level, Pictomancer has nothing other than their RGB combo button. The optimal path is to focus the boss, since the duty ends the moment it goes down. For duty 2, we went to a copied factory as a replacement, always with the alliance raids. Thankfully, we caught the first boss in time to not be forced to just cheer on the party. On this first boss, we got far enough down to the wire that our alliance specifically ran out of healers for a bit, but we still succeeded. Now, from a Pictomancer's point of view, at level 80, I couldn't quite remember whether Holy in White was a loss or not without Comet in Black to prop up the subtractive palette, and for that reason, I decided to make more extensive use of Holy in White, just on the off chance it was worthwhile. And even if it wasn't, it would make a very small difference. The way the math works for this discussion about Holy in White is that the average potency of the full 1-2-3, 1-2-3 subtractive palette 1-2-3 is what needs to be compared to Holy in White. And once Comet in Black is introduced, this whole sequence averages higher than Holy in White, meaning that using Holy in White can turn around and be a very small DPS loss 30 seconds down the line. It's a bit funny because overall, unless you play perfectly, it is probably not going to make a big difference in the grand scheme of the fight. Overall, our raid did really well, so one thing we could talk about is the mark smashes on Engels. Of course, there's the obvious lefts and rights, but for some players the front and back smashes might be slightly harder to tell apart. If the smash is hitting the backside of the arena, Engels walks closer to the arena, and the follow-up will slice the left and right sides, making the center front safe from it all. If Engels walks further away from the arena instead, the front of the arena is hit, followed by a saw through the middle, so the back, left and right are safe. I'm mainly saying this because in this run, I spent too much time not looking properly at Engels, leading to me being hit way more than I should. For duty 3, we went to Underkeep as Red Mage. With a solid team, even with some mistakes, we managed to clear the duty in just 13 minutes. A general Red Mage tip, especially for high levels, is that maximizing the value of your Fire and Stone procs may not always be necessary, as due to a combination of melee combos, acceleration and swift cast, it is a pretty frequent situation that you might have trouble getting around to doing a melee combo in the pursuit of getting value out of your procs. Sometimes just sending the melee combo on time is just better, especially since sometimes the proc chains could lead to you completely topping out on resources too, which itself can cause some awkward problems for the rotation. It is also worth mentioning that the difference between Jolt and the procs is just 20 potency and 1 mana. For duty 4, we went to a Herb Turtle as Summoner, and with a slight worry the tank might not realize, we did actually make it through without issue. For duty 5, we are replacement in Tower at Paradigm's Breach, again with the Alliance raids. This of course means that we arrive to be commentators for the battle with Hansel and Gretel. As we arrive, we can see that Alliance B is pretty much dead, even more so because their only alive healer is, right here with me. Alliance A's ninja is also up here. Hopefully, they can turn that around soon. A tanking tip about this boss fight is that once they choose their weapons, the one with the shield effect should be turned to face the raid, which might seem weird. However, as the boss has no mechanics that cleave in front of it during this phase, there's no need to face it away necessarily. The main reason that it needs to be faced towards the raid though is that some jobs have large AoE attacks that have difficulty not hitting the shield if it's facing away. White Mage's SIs, Dancer's finishes come to mind. And as that mechanic ends, Alliance B sends the limit break and fully recovers, and then 3 players get chopped by the flybys, but they're quickly raised again. Yet another shield phase starts, but almost immediately one of the bosses die, leading to the end of the fight. The rest of the duty goes about as expected, with surprisingly little death. For duty 6, we went to O3N as Black Mage. A tip for this fight right off the bat is to remember that the boss opens with a cone-shaped rivet spell that you need to dodge, so getting up close to the boss is a good call. Due to the sequence of AoEs, exactly where is best to place the ley lines can be hard to say. Just make sure you dodge the frog spell at least. For some level 70 Black Mage tips, take note that Thunder 3 at full value is about 30 more potency than Fire 4, slightly more when we account for potential spell speed. At the same time, Thunder 3 is your only rotational instant cast at this level, so if you want to get fancy with optimization tricks, conveniently planning Thunder reapplications may be required. Of course, the only thing you can do in terms of optimization is Thunder 3, Swiftcast and Transpose Blizzard 3 for about 87 gained potency. But if you have to reapply Thunder super early to make this happen, you can easily lose all the gains. And similarly, if you reapply Thunder super late for it, the same thing can happen. The options to align the Thunder Dart with when you want to reapply it boil down to choosing when you use Foul, and to some degree whether you choose to finish with Flare or not, and of course how much spell speed you have. Triple cast can also make things a little bit more flexible. Now, despite some of our players having quite a rough time with the fight, we somehow still managed to skip the intermission. Wild! For duty 7, we went to Peppy Pepper Plums as Pixomancer. Once again, focus on the boss, all the ads disappear once it is defeated. For duty 8, we went to Bomb Has Been Planted. A soft reminder is that at this level, Palm use on its own is actually a damage loss for Pictomancer, assuming you have to paint the motif in the fight. Once you get to Winged Muse and so Mark of the Ages, it turns around and becomes a gain again. For duty 9, we went to Leviathan Extreme. I've done this extreme quite a few times by now, but this time I learned a better way to make the clears more consistent. Admittedly, the capability of your healers especially will be the most impactful, but even as a DPS, you have ways to influence the chance of success. Notably, at certain points in the fight, Leviathan becomes invulnerable at certain HP thresholds, and these thresholds are easily reached without using cooldowns or anything, which means you can hold any cooldowns your job might have for dealing with the ads as fast as possible, with the priority being Wave Tooth, Wave Spine, Gyrospume. And the wave spumes should simply be ignored. On the first attempt, for the most part we just gradually died off to different things, but sliding off the platform caused especially many problems. On the second attempt, everyone contributed a lot better to focusing the ads as they came. Everyone survived the first slide, and then, as our scholar reaches 16 stacks of debuff anyway, they die from AoE damage. A moment later, 3 players slide off the platform, and now we're in trouble. We do manage to survive the second raid wipe, which heralds the finale of the fight. One Wave Tooth must be defeated before it gets us, and then it is just about bringing it home. With 1 tank, 1 healer and 1 DPS alive, can it be done? Of course it can. Second pull clear is actually quite impressive considering what things the team was having trouble with. For duty 10, we went to A1N as Red Mage, and the fight goes about as you can expect. Usually, the only advice you need for this fight is make sure to switch to the second boss that comes down near the end so that they die together. If somehow this isn't enough, similar to the Leviathan Extreme fight, you could hold your own cooldowns to make sure they go down together. Some very specific combinations of jobs could actually run into problems if the second boss comes down at just the wrong time, as it could mean that the team just turbos the main boss down with cooldowns and then have to deal with the second boss with only filler. For duty 11, we went to Under the Weight as Summoner. Oh boy, ruin spam. Immediately after for duty 12, we went to Friendly Jobbers, so even more ruin spam. For duty 13, we went to Underkeep again, and this run went very well with nothing particularly stand out, so let's review some general summoner tips. The first tip specific to this dungeon is that the first boss leaves the arena around 28 seconds into the fight, so depending on the timing of your cooldowns as you enter the fight, it may be worthwhile to stall a bit, or hurry a bit. On the other hand, Summoner's rotation, as we know, is filled with stuff, so if moving locations or otherwise downtime leads to losing more than a single GCD, then you start to look at what you're skipping to get to Bahamut and Phoenix as quickly as possible. What really matters here is that each summon takes a few seconds, so if for some reason you haven't properly started on summons yet, but there's only like 15 to 20 seconds left before Bahamut, then a solid strategy is to summon each of the primal summons using a GZD or two from that, and then moving on to the next, as the actual summoning itself is the biggest payoff in each package. This can be helpful on the first boss, but also in general dungeon contexts when running from fight to fight. For Duty 14, we went to Over the Plate as Black Mage. More Fire 1 spam. Woo! As usual, the fight ends on a single Blizzard 1. And finally for Duty 15, we went to Bardam's Mettle. Just like we covered back in the O3N, the main optimization for single target boils down to UI1 B3 swift casts. For AoE, things get a little bit weird. Indeed, Flare, Flare, Transpose, Freeze, Blank, Transpose, Repeat is considered optimal. However, a Blank kinda has to be an instant cast. And, as previously mentioned, Thunder is the only option that goes in that slot at this level, assuming you didn't set up some sort of chained triple cast and swift cast situation. And if Thunder doesn't need to be reapplied, then it is not necessarily the best choice. Specifically, if Thunder does not need to be reapplied yet, then replacing the Thunder with a slow, chilly Fire 2 is actually slightly better. While yes, UI1 Fire 2 sucks, it leads to 2 fully powered flares instead of 1 AF1 and 1 full powered AF3, which is how it turns around and becomes good. As the MP is simply not needed for anything, the extra 1.9 or so seconds of also casting Blizzard 2 to make the Fire 2 faster just isn't worth it. Now, there is a little bit of a fun fact, I guess, on the final boss here. After a certain amount of time, there is actually an ad intermission, where the boss leaves the arena and ad spawns in the northeast side of the arena. As you fight it, the boss winds up and dashes through the arena. Then, another ad spawns in the southwest, and the boss dashes across again. However, the reason why this is somehow a fun fact is that I've been told many players have never seen this intermission, as indeed, if you do enough damage before the specific time frame, the boss instead skips straight to the wing intermission. By the way, an excellent time to use a mage or ranged LB. I'm also pretty sure you can skip this intermission if you do even more damage. What I find interesting about this observation about the ad phase is that obviously, in Stormblood, the ad phase was basically a given. In Shadowbringers, I guess sometimes you might skip it. In Endwalker, I feel like I started to really see groups skip it, but it isn't until Dawntrail that I noticed that it is almost a surprise if the group does not skip it. We of course had excellent damage, so we skipped it here. Nearly 50% guild hests once again, but at least we got some interesting duties like Leviathan Extreme again. And we have now passed 13/23 of the way to the achievement. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, Black Mage's swift-casted Blizzard 3 trick for extra potency is a strategy that technically has been a possible reliable option since Shadowbringers, possibly longer ago than that. However, both because MP was required for UI1 B3 in the past, making it a bit unreliable, and because other options like swift casting a Fire 4 for instance to make it take less time, which was considered more impactful and safe, among other also better options, this made the Blizzard 3 option irrelevant. In other words, the real reason swift casting Blizzard 3 in this way is now considered relevant is because all of the better alternatives have been removed or made redundant.